He stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage with shaking hands, empty pockets, and a voice that had once kept him alive on the streets. This poor Filipino boy didn't sing for fame, he sang to survive, and what happened next left Simon Cowell in tears. Before this story changes the way you see talent forever, subscribe to the channel and stay with us, because stories like this deserve to be heard. The boy stood alone behind the curtain, listening to the roar of the crowd on the other side. The sound felt unreal to him, like waves crashing against a shore he had never seen before. His shoes were borrowed, slightly too big, and his shirt had been carefully ironed by someone he had met only 2 days ago. He kept rubbing his palms together, not because of nerves, but because it reminded him of the nights he used to do the same thing just to keep his hands warm while sleeping on cardboard. His name was Mateo Reyes, 14 years old, from a coastal slum outside Manila, Philippines, a place where dreams were whispered quietly because speaking them out loud felt dangerous. Mateo had learned very early that life did not pause for children. When he was 6, his father, a fisherman, never returned from the sea after a storm. People said the waves were too strong, that God had other plans, but all Mateo knew was that one day there was a man who lifted him onto his shoulders, and the next day there was only silence and unanswered questions. His mother tried to hold the family together, washing clothes, selling street food, doing anything she could, but sickness came quickly and stayed. By the time Mateo was 9, he was standing beside her grave, holding his younger sister's hand, realizing that childhood had quietly ended. With no relatives able to take them both in, Mateo made the hardest decision of his life. He sent his sister to live with a distant aunt in the province, promising her he would visit when he could. He stayed behind in Manila, believing he could earn money faster in the city. The truth was crueler than he imagined. Days blurred into nights, and nights into hunger. He slept near markets, under bridges, sometimes outside karaoke bars where broken speakers played music until dawn. That was where singing first became more than just sound to him. It became shelter. It became food. It became hope. At first, he sang quietly, almost apologetically, afraid someone would chase him away. But something strange happened whenever he opened his mouth. People slowed down. Some stopped completely. Coins fell near his feet, not because he begged, but because his voice carried pain that people recognized. He sang Filipino ballads, old love songs, and sometimes American songs he learned by listening through cracked windows. One song, in particular, stayed with him, a melody about holding on when everything else is gone. He sang it every night, and every night, it kept him alive. Years passed that way. Mateo grew taller, thinner, stronger in ways that never show on the outside. One evening, a woman stopped longer than most. She listened with tears in her eyes and asked him why he wasn't in school. Mateo laughed softly, not out of humor, but because the question felt like another lifetime. The woman introduced herself as a volunteer from a local charity that helped street children. Mateo had heard promises before, but something about her voice felt different. She didn't offer miracles. She offered a meal, a place to sleep, and singing lessons if he wanted them. The shelter was small and crowded, but for Mateo, it felt like a palace. He slept on a mattress for the first time in years. He ate until his stomach hurt. Most importantly, he sang without fear of being chased away. A music teacher at the shelter noticed that Mateo didn't just sing notes, he told stories with his voice. Every word carried memory, every pause carried loss. The teacher recorded a short video of Mateo singing and posted it online, never imagining what would happen next. The video traveled farther than Mateo ever had. It crossed oceans, languages, and screens. One day, the shelter director called him into the office and told him he had been invited to audition for America's Got Talent. Mateo didn't understand what that meant at first. He had seen clips of big stages on shared phones, but America felt like another planet. When they told him Simon Cowell would be one of the judges, the name meant nothing to him. What mattered was the chance to sing somewhere people would truly listen. The journey to America was filled with firsts. First airplane. First passport. First time looking down at the clouds and wondering if his parents could somehow see him now. But the biggest weight he carried wasn't fear of the judges or the crowd. It was guilt. He worried that leaving meant forgetting where he came from. The night before the audition, he called his sister, now 12, and told her everything. She cried and told him to sing the song he used to sing to her when they were scared. Mateo promised her he would. On audition day, the AGT stage looked bigger than anything he had ever imagined. The lights were blinding. The audience felt endless. When the judges asked his name and where he was from, his voice trembled slightly, but he stood tall. He told them he was from the Philippines and that he used to sing on the streets to survive. The room shifted. People leaned forward. Simon Cowell's expression softened in a way viewers rarely saw. Simon asked him why he chose to sing. Mateo paused, swallowing hard, then said that singing was the only thing that never left him when everything else did. For a moment, the theater was silent. When the music started, Mateo closed his eyes. He wasn't on a stage anymore. He was back on the sidewalk, singing under flickering lights, hoping for enough coins to eat. The first note came out fragile, almost hesitant, but then his voice grew. It filled the room with a raw honesty that couldn't be rehearsed. He sang about hunger, about hope, about holding on when the world turns its back. Halfway through the song, something unexpected happened. Mateo's voice cracked, not because he missed a note, but because the memory became too real. The audience held its breath. He almost stopped. Then he remembered his sister's voice on the phone. He remembered the promise. He took a breath and continued, stronger than before. When he finished, there was a moment of stunned silence before the room exploded. The audience rose to their feet. Some were crying openly. The camera cut to Simon Cowell, and for once, he couldn't speak. His eyes were filled with tears. Simon finally said that in all his years on the show, he had heard many great voices but very few true stories. He told Mateo that his voice didn't just sound good, it mattered. Another judge said that this wasn't just an audition, it was a moment people would remember. Mateo stood there, overwhelmed, not sure whether to smile or cry. Then came the twist no one expected. Simon asked Mateo to sing another song, right there, without preparation. The pressure was enormous. Mateo hesitated, then nodded. He sang the song he used to sing to his sister at night, a simple melody filled with innocence. It stripped away the stage, the lights, the fame. It felt like listening to a child sing to survive the dark. When he finished, Simon wiped his eyes and pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down as Mateo dropped to his knees, sobbing. He had sung for survival his entire life, and now, for the first time, he was singing for a future. Backstage, Mateo kept asking if it was real. He said he wished his parents could see him. One of the producers told him that millions would. As the weeks passed, Mateo trained harder than ever, but fame brought new challenges. He struggled with pressure, with fear of disappointing people, with the feeling that he didn't belong. One night before a live show, he almost quit, believing the world he came from and the world he was now in could never meet. What stopped him was a letter from his sister. She wrote that kids in her school watched his audition and believed they could dream too. She wrote that she was proud of him, not because he was on TV, but because he never forgot who he was. Mateo folded the letter and kept it in his pocket every time he performed. In the semi-finals, Mateo didn't just sing. He told his story. He dedicated the song to children who sing not for applause, but for survival. The audience responded with overwhelming love. Although he didn't ultimately win the competition, something far greater happened. Scholarships were offered. Music programs reached out. Donations poured in for the shelter back home in Manila. The final twist came months later. Mateo returned to the Philippines, not as a street singer, but as a student, a brother, and a symbol of hope. He reunited with his sister and sang with her on the same streets where he once begged for coins. This time, people gathered not out of pity, but respect. Simon Cowell later said in an interview that Mateo's audition reminded him why the show existed in the first place. Not to create stars, but to give voices a chance to be heard. Mateo still sings. Sometimes on stages, sometimes in quiet rooms. But he never forgets the nights when singing meant survival. And every time he opens his mouth, you can hear not just a voice, but a life that refused to be silent.